Bobby Drake Iceman is one of those overlooked mutants who could potentially destroy the entire Earth. So it's time to cool the heck off as we go over the 10 secret powers that you never knew the X-Men's Iceman had. Also, if you can tell me what movie I was referencing with that first line in the comments down below, gold star for you. Number 10. Thermokinesis. Considering his name is Iceman, everyone knows that Bobby Drake has cryokinesis, aka the ability to generate, manipulate, and fully control ice and snow. But this goes hand in hand with his thermokinesis as well. This is the ability to lower both his external and internal body temperature, which projects intense coldness from his body. Like the rest of us humies, the nerve centers for regulating Iceman's body temperature are found in the part of the brain called the hypothalamus. Unlike us though, Iceman can mentally override his hypothalamus to allow his body temperature to be lowered. This ability converts the latent thermal energies in and around his body into an unknown form of energy that is then dissipated. Now this would potentially hurt a human, but a related mutation has also rendered his body tissues unaffected by sub-zero temperatures, thankfully and luckily. Iceman can consciously immediately lower his body temperature from its normal 98 degrees Fahrenheit to absolute zero and lower within the span of a few tenths of a second. Number 9. Icy cover. As Iceman's body temperature drastically falls, the surrounding moisture in the air that is in contact with him also begins to lower in temperature. In a similar but much more extreme way that condensed moisture forms frost, the moisture surrounding Iceman forms an icy covering which encompasses his entire body and obscures his face. When Iceman first began doing this and appeared in the early X-Men comics, this ability essentially made our mutant look like a snowman. He was covered head to toe in snow. But as Bobby learned to increase the severity of his coldness, the consistency of this frozen moisture became crystalline ice. This ice constantly cracks with any movement of his body and immediately reforms, allowing Bobby to move, but with a cracking ice sound every time. Through practice, Iceman has learned to control the intensity of his coldness, and he can selectively lower the temperature of isolated parts of his body to cause this icy shielding in specific areas. Number 8. Organic ice form. But Bobby doesn't only cover himself in ice, he can also completely become ice. Hilariously and kind of redundantly, it's called organic ice. I don't even know if that makes sense. Though the appearance can be similar to when he covers himself in ice, in this form Iceman is now virtually indestructible, or rather, he is basically unkillable, able to reform himself from being shattered or evaporated, and he is completely translucent in his ice form as well. He has even been incinerated while in human form and was able to rebuild himself in ice. In his ice form, he is able to use the moisture in the air to form spikes, shields, and attach other extra appendages to his body, which he can use in combat. Number 7. Ice golems. Unsurprisingly, Iceman has the ability to create structures out of ice. The level of detail is determined by his own imagination, as his mastery over his powers has reached the atomic level. For most of his superhero career, Iceman was not able to make the ice sculptures move of their own accord, but this all changed during the Battle of the Atom event in 2013, when Iceman showed off a new extension of his abilities. It was revealed that Iceman can create basic ice structures that possess a rudimentary intelligence. One of these sculptures actually rebelled against Iceman and joined the Brotherhood, which is just frickin' weird. It also makes no sense, but this is a comic, so we just go with it. These constructs have been seeming ice clones of Iceman himself, or they have also been big, hulking behemoths and ice monsters. Some other constructs Bobby has created have been turning raindrops into fists that he used against the Iron Fist, a crystal-like ice focuser able to focus the laser beams of Cyclops, and even an entire ice city with intricate details. Number 6. Ice Zord. Bouncing off those semi-sentient constructs to something a bit more awesome that I think deserves its own whole point. In Wolverine and the X-Men issue 33 to 34, Iceman is part of a group of mutant faculty at Wolverine's Jean Grey School for Higher Learning sent to take on the Hellfire Academy and Cade Kilgore. Cade has been utilizing a handful of sentient living volcano behemoths to defend his academy, and while the heroes have a sentient living island fighting on their side, they only have one. So, what does Iceman do? Iceman creates an absolutely massive ice behemoth that looks like Voltron or like a Power Ranger Zord, with an absolutely massive ice sword, and he takes it into battle, slicing the behemoths apart and yelling "Glacier Fist" as he commands the Ice Voltron from inside an ice cockpit. It's absolutely amazing and completely bonkers. Number 5. Hydrokinesis. Alright, so we know Iceman can control ice. But there was a time when Emma Frost mentally controlled Bobby, and she utilized his powers in ways that he had never even imagined. It turns out that since Iceman can control ice, which is just frozen water, then it actually makes total sense that he also has hydrokinesis, or the ability to manipulate water. And since he is a potential Omega level mutant, he can do it at a molecular level. We know that he can use surrounding moisture to augment himself, but when Emma was controlling him, she used his power to travel within large bodies of water very quickly by breaking down to his base levels in the water and then reforming at his destination. Iceman has demonstrated the ability to be transformed into nothing more than water or water vapor, yet remain conscious and retain the use of his powers. Essentially, wherever there is any moisture of any kind, Iceman is a threat. Number 4. Cryokinetic perception / cryo travel. Okay, so I'm going to wrap these two up into one, even though they aren't really technically fully the same, although they kind of are at the same time. For starters, after Bobby, whose powers were significantly amplified and who was kind of a little bonkers at the time, managed to freeze the earth in ice and snow, he gained the ability to spread his actual consciousness through the ice and through the snow to allow him to perceive literally all events occurring within it. He could monitor the entire earth through the ice and snow, and it made him practically a god. With his ability to transform organic matter, such as the human body, to organic ice and back again, it is possible for him to project his consciousness through moisture molecules and reform his body at the destination, like he did when Emma Frost controlled him, and he did indeed do this in this story as well, traveling through the ice and snow and appearing wherever he wanted. Number 3. Cellular replacement. We already talked about, a few times, Iceman's hydrokinesis and how he has literally turned himself into and traveled through the molecules of water. Well, Bobby also eventually discovered that he was able to use his control over moisture to draw ambient moisture into himself and thus use that moisture to replace his own body's cells. Quote, a body swap done one piece, one cell at a time. This upgrade to his already insane abilities allowed Bobby to avoid receiving a fatal dose of neurotoxin by letting the poisoned molecules of his body dissipate into vapor and then be replaced by untainted water molecules from his surroundings. Iceman can replace his own cells with new ones, healing and purging himself by remaking his own body. As long as there's moisture, Iceman cannot be stopped. It's just a fact. Number 2. Thermovision. With such a fine-tuned control over cold and temperature like what Iceman has, it would make sense that he would be able to maybe sense or feel heat. But it turns out he can literally see it. Because of the absence of heat around himself when his temperature is dropped, Bobby can literally see beings simply based on the heat signatures they give off. This happened most famously when the X-Men were facing against Onslaught. At the time, Onslaught managed to mess the X-Men's perception of things and became invisible. Luckily, the X-Men had Bobby. He scanned the entire room, and thanks to the heat that Onslaught's body was naturally giving off, Bobby saw Onslaught the minute he entered the room, using his ice blasts to attack him and break his psionic shielding, allowing the other X-Men to see him too. And finally, in at number 1, he can stop the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is not just strong. The Juggernaut is fueled by magic, powered by a massively powerful extra-dimensional being called Sidorak. Through Sidorak, Juggernaut was granted the ability to gain unstoppable momentum with each step, to the point that not even the hammer of Thor can stop him in his tracks. Who cares about ancient magical Uru metal hammers though, when you have the power of ice? Iceman managed to completely stop the Juggernaut in his tracks during one of the X-Men's many encounters with Cain Marko. Now it is worth noting that Juggernaut was not in his top form at the time, but regardless, stopping the Juggernaut dead in his tracks using massive amounts of ice to immobilize him is incredibly impressive. But it wasn't the only way Bobby has stopped the guy. And this one, I have to warn you, is ridiculous even for a comic book. During another battle with the Juggernaut, Iceman got creative with his powers. Iceman used his powers to, and I quote, freeze the speed of light around him. Freeze the speed of light around Juggernaut. Iceman is so powerful, he temporarily rewrote the laws of physics themselves to achieve his victory. It's also worth noting that in this same fight, he created wings made out of ice that actually allowed him to fly, which I don't think is possible. Personally though, if it was me, and I'm just gonna put in my own little opinion here, I would just make like a loop of ice so the Juggernaut slips and goes around and around and around and around, gaining speed and momentum, and then I would give it like a little offshoot ramp and just send him careening into space, like unable to stop. He would just be gone. What are you gonna do? Nothing. You can't stop. I'm just saying.
Number 10. Control over life and death. Obviously, as the Phoenix or even the Dark Phoenix, Jean has been shown to have this ability. But did you know that this power actually first manifested when Jean's powers did, really going on to showcase the potential of her future abilities. When Jean's best friend Annie died when she was little after being tragically hit by a car, the traumatic experience caused Jean's powers to manifest. She reached out and created a psychic link between her and her friend, and despite being very new to these abilities, Jean was actually able to hold her friend's mind there, keeping her alive and trying to protect her from the encroaching darkness. Unfortunately, she was not strong or skilled enough just yet to do so for more than a few moments, and ultimately could not bring her friend back to life as Annie's injuries were simply too great. Eventually, Annie's mind disappeared, dying while their minds were linked, leaving Jean alone in the darkness. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when I get to talk about Jean Grey, I know I do, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. And if you are, thank you. Number 9. A God's Mind. Sure, the progenitor at this point is not your standard celestial. It was actually created by the Eternals and the Avengers, chiefly with major help from the mutant Mr. Sinister and the main Avenger Tony Stark. The progenitor was revived and reprogrammed, given new morals that were dictated by Earth's heroes in the hopes that it would help the Eternals in ending the war between Druig, who was then ruler of the Eternals, Eternal Prime if you will, and the mutants, who he had classified as deviants. However, this plan backfired when the Celestial decided to blame the inhabitants of Earth for the state of the planet, and put the entire populace basically on trial. In an attempt to save the world, Jean and a covert team infiltrated the progenitor, moving around inside it in the hopes of reaching its kill switch, so they could basically turn it off. Without Jean though, they never would have even made it very far. At the end, Jean was also crucial to the team's efforts, holding psychic damage that would have easily crushed them at bay, and breaking into the Celestial's mind. No small feat considering Celestials are giant cosmic gods. And yes, I know this one was one that was still made by the people of Earth sort of, but still, the wiring's all still there, you know what I mean? Number 8. Telepathy. While this one might seem obvious to most readers in the present day, it's important to note that Jean's powerful telepathic skills were actually for many years a secret to both readers and actually to Jean herself. Initially, when we're introduced to Jean in X-Men issue number 1, it is her telekinetic abilities that are put on display. She like picks up a book and like flips through it. And I gotta admit, initially Jean's powers actually seem like the best of the bunch, with the most potential in terms of power levels. And yes, I know this is not how Jean's powers would be depicted, but I'm just saying in that first issue when I was introduced to Jean, I thought she was super cool. However, this feeling of her being super powerful that I had would be very short-lived, as Jean would be shown to struggle with even lifting her own weight telekinetically. In fact, at one point, I think it's even mentioned that Jean's own physical weight is her max limit for what she can lift with her mind. Apparently, what one can lift with one's own body is weirdly relevant, or used to be anyways, when it came to what a superhero could lift with their mind. Jean's like, I can't lift that much. They were like, you can't lift that much with your mind either, girl. Evidently, we didn't want to let Jean be too powerful. Otherwise, who would act as the team's damsel in distress? Which was the role Jean quickly became relegated to filling, honestly. However, later on, not only would her telekinetic powers become stronger as a result of both training and her bond to the Phoenix Force, but we'd also learned that this wasn't even Jean's major ability. No. As a psionic, Jean actually became known for being more powerful as a telepath, an ability that was hidden away from her for most of her life in an attempt to protect her from her own inexperience and her power's instability, thanks to mental blocks that were put in place by, you guessed it, Charles Xavier, who first met Jean when she was very young and her powers had just begun begun to manifest. Charles, of course, would eventually remove these blocks later in Jean's life when he felt that Jean was better equipped to handle these extraordinarily powerful abilities. And maybe when he was like, you know what, I should probably, the cat's out of the bag, I gotta let people know Jean's actually super OP. I think he didn't want Jean to harsh his mellow, to be honest. Number 7, empathy. One of the most overlooked powers that I think Jean and some others possess is the power of empathy. Empathy basically means that you feel what others feel. When someone says to you, I empathize, it's different than saying I sympathize, because they aren't just, imagining what you're going through and trying to understand it. They actually feel what you feel, likely having shared an experience with you or an emotional response at the very least. In comic book terms, being empathic, it doesn't usually just mean feeling what others feel. It can also mean controlling others' emotions, or using the emotions of people around you to make other people feel differently. A power that Jean has demonstrated before, like when she used her empathic skills to defeat Xavier's evil twin, Cassandra Nova. And she's actually used this ability to defeat a lot of people, I'm gonna be honest. But I don't think people think about the empathy, and it's pretty crazy, man. Number 6, finding the weakness. I mean, as a telepath, of course Jean can scan your mind and take with her any information that she finds. And this, of course, includes, you guessed it, any weaknesses that you have. Especially if you fall into the trap of thinking about said weaknesses while Jean is in your mind. If you have a nut allergy, watch out if Jean Grey's around you if you're fighting her. But even if you don't think about your weaknesses, Jean could probably easily find this out. That is exactly what she managed to do, although it wasn't quite as easy to know when she got inside his head. And you'd think telepathically he'd be pretty gifted himself, being the creator and leader of a hive mind as the Clintar and symbiote King in Black. But even Null could not resist Jean's power. Although she did have to try really hard, admittedly. Number 5, overcoming mental blocks. This is most likely a case of writers just forgetting the focus of Jean's psionic powers in the earlier days, but it happened in continuity. So that also means we can kind of count their possible mistake as actually a major strength for Jean. And if another writer wanted to reflect back on this moment, they could easily use it to bolster Jean's power levels, even back in the day when she was notably written to be a lot weaker. Remember how I said that Professor X created mental blocks for Jean when it came to her telepathy, which he later removed when he felt she was ready to handle her own off-the-charts power levels? Well, apparently early on, Jean did still display some telepathic abilities, even somehow with those blocks supposedly in place. She read Professor X's mind in an issue of Captain America, sensing that something was wrong by reading his thoughts. She literally says, like, she read his mind, basically. If this is true and it's considered canon, it would mean that Jean temporarily pushed through Xavier's mental blocks to read his mind, which, gotta be honest, that's like on a whole other level of power, I think. So if we want to count it as canon, there you go. Number 4, interstellar travel. When it comes to those with psionic abilities, we don't typically think of them as cosmic heroes who can fly through space and fight aliens, but guess what? Jean can. While bonded with the Phoenix Force, Jean has been shown to be capable of interstellar travel, propelling herself through space. The vacuum of space. She can just fly right through it and she feels fine, doesn't even need a spacesuit. She has also been shown to be able to fly and make it appear as though others are flying on Earth by using her telekinesis, but that one you probably already knew about. The interstellar travel though, that might have caught you unawares. Number 3, communicating undetected. Another great power as a telepath that Jean manages to have is keeping her telepathic conversations secret, which, when there's a lot of other telepaths around you, is not easy. Basically, there are many other powerful telepaths around you who could be trying to pry and eavesdrop on you, and a lot of them are also powerful. But Jean has managed to keep more than a few mental conversations a secret, even from some of the other most powerful telepaths in the universe, including Null, the god of symbiotes. While Null himself was in the middle of a telepathic conversation with Dylan, Jean actually managed to use her powers to slip into said conversation completely unnoticed, with Null not even aware that Jean was also talking to Dylan telepathically at the same time, and that Dylan wasn't really listening to him so much as he was listening to Jean. Honestly, kinda rude, but also, yeah, Jean's trying to tell Dylan how to save the day, so fair enough. Number 2, control over nightmares. I don't know what's more frightening, the fact that Jean can basically manipulate people's dreams and nightmares through the villain Nightmare, or the threat she gave Nightmare after defeating him, where she basically said if she had to deal with him again, she was gonna destroy him at an atomic level. She's like, look, I don't like to end people's lives, but if you mess with me again, I will destroy you at an atomic level. Either way you slice it though, when it comes to nightmares that have been created by the god of nightmares himself, Nightmare, Jean is the one who would really call the shots between them when they're pitted against one another. I've seen them run into each other a few times, and it does not end well for Nightmare. Number 1. The Phoenix Force. This is less of a power and more of a really interesting fact about a power. So for those of you that heard me say that title and go, well obviously we know that, Amanda. Yes, yeah, I know. But I actually didn't know this fact myself initially, and I was surprised by it somewhat, so I figured I'd share it with you. We all know that Jean is one of the preferred hosts, if not, I would say, the preferred host for the Phoenix Force. But did you know that the all-powerful cosmic entity was actually holding Jean back? That's right. Jean has stated before that she actually became aware after the Phoenix Force left her that it was causing her to hold back her abilities and her power for fear of the Phoenix taking hold over her, because then she wouldn't have control. So while many like to say that Jean has only ever been extremely powerful when she's merged with the Phoenix, it turns out it's probably just the opposite. So yeah, Jean destroying like a whole world, apparently that's Jean holding back. Which honestly, to me, I gotta say, that all kind of makes sense. Saying Jean isn't actually powerful and that it's all the Phoenix has always felt like a cop-out to me, considering it's her own power and her own empathy that the Phoenix was seemingly attracted to in the first place. So you would think that would mean that she's at least on the same power level as the Phoenix, if not more powerful, and that's why it was like, yeah, I want you as the host, cause you got the power. Number 10. Resurrection. While not always influenced by Madelyne and her own abilities, Maddie not only has a powerful healing factor, but she seems to have found herself in a constant cycle of resurrection. Meaning that even when she seems to be dead and gone and we haven't seen her for honestly years, she's the kind of villain, and honestly not even just a villain now, also just as a character, that always comes back. Madelyne has been defeated multiple times and has returned since her initial introduction and defeat in Inferno more than 5 times over the course of her 40-year history. Now that is quite a lot of returns, and also quite a lot of disappearances, honestly. One thing is for sure, if Maddie is killed or seemingly permanently defeated or disposed of in some way, she always comes back. Eventually anyways. Might take a few years, but she'll be back. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button. Number 9. Phoenix Force. The Phoenix Force is literally a part of Madelyne Pryor. No, seriously, she wouldn't exist without it. While some might argue that Madelyne Pryor is a weaker version of Jean Grey, those folks likely don't understand her origin. At least her retcon origin. Not the origin Chris Claremont originally intended for her, but the one we got. Jean has been connected to the Phoenix Force before being its host, but Maddie is literally made from a piece of the Phoenix, with a piece of it residing inside her. So she doesn't need to be a host of the Force to tap into its raw power and energy. The Phoenix Force is one of the most powerful forces in all of the known universe, and potentially even the multiverse over at Marvel, considering it has the ability to literally rewrite reality. Because Maddie was literally made from it, this also means its potential lives inside her as well. Maddie did not know her origin and initially lived appearing as a normal human. It wasn't until she learned the truth of her origin, her retconned origin admittedly, that she began to be able to tap into her true mutant and even cosmic power. Number 8. Psychic Link. Madelyne Pryor has the ability to link her mind to another being. We see her doing this during the initial Inferno event, and honestly, it's pretty scary. It is in doing this that she almost completely destroys and defeats Jean Grey during their fight against one another. I can't even imagine having my mind psychically linked to someone, especially not someone who looks identical to me and seemingly kinda stole my life. I mean, whichever way you want to look at that, either from Jean's perspective or Maddie's perspective, they could definitely both share that perspective when looking at the other of someone stealing someone's life. Initially, the two women shared a psychic link, one that Madelyne later exploits during Inferno in an attempt to kill Jean, although of course through harming herself. Madelyne's plan at that point is to basically take her own life, thereby destroying Jean through their link, thereby taking Jean down along with her. If I'm going down, you're coming with me, and I'll go down if it means I can defeat you. Number 7. Lives on in Jean. I think one of the most wild powers that Maddie has in the comics that we tend to overlook is her influence over Jean. Now, following the events of Inferno, Madelyne's personality and memories basically lived on in Jean Grey. Jean was forced to take both Maddie's psyche and the Phoenix Force within herself in order to survive Maddie's psychic attack on her soul. This actually gives Madelyne some power through Jean though. It's actually through Madelyne's influence that Jean and the X-Men decided to fatally attack Mr. Sinister, seemingly destroying him permanently after Inferno. Although of course in reality he would return, because that's comics for you. Normally such use of lethal force would not be the X-Men or Jean's way, but it was Maddie's influence that actually prompted them to act as such. While it's not a power that Maddie can easily control or flex necessarily, it's still pretty impressive to think that technically Sinister initially being permanently defeated was in good part because of Maddie's influence on and manipulation of the hero's psyches. Number 6. Take your memories. At one point, Madelyne Pryor attempts to take all of Jean's memories, and even threatens to do so. During the Dark Web event, she actually worked with Chasm, the current evil persona of Ben Reilly, who had worked on a device that would forcefully take someone's memories from them. Ben was doing this to basically get the memories that he lost back during the Beyond event, aiming to get them back from Peter Parker's Spider-Man, since Ben's early memories were initially copied from Peter's mind when Ben was created. Without them, there was a big hole in his mind and his personality, a chasm, if you will. Huh? Get it? Teaming up with Ben, Maddie sought to retrieve memories of raising her baby, who would eventually grow up through time to become Cable, from Jean. She felt that she was basically robbed of these memories after she was defeated in the initial Inferno event, with Jean taking over her role as baby Cable's mom. However, in the end, Maddie didn't have to forcibly take Jean's memories at all, as instead Jean chose to willingly share them with Madelyne, having never wanted to fight her in the first place. However, it was still a power that Madelyne has, and she could have used it, but she didn't. Number 5. Control over demons. Madelyne Pryor isn't just known as Madelyne Pryor. In the comics, she also has another name, the Goblin Queen. In fact, when I was recently cosplaying Maddie at SDCC this year, most people referred to me by that name. They call me the Goblin Queen. Most people knew me either as Jean's evil clone or just the Goblin Queen. Maddie earned this name after she made a pact with the Demon of Limbo, thereby becoming their queen. Although she may have felt pretty in her power at that time, in reality she was still kinda just being manipulated by them somewhat. Still, Maddie did hold some sway over the goblins and demons of Limbo, considering that she was their ally and their partner. And you know, Goblin Queen. But like I said, how much power did she have at that time? I don't think she had a ton, really. Number 4. Her secret name. The really wild thing with Madelyne Pryor that still amazes me is her secret name. I'm not talking about her title as the Black Queen or even the Goblin Queen. I'm talking more about the fact that no one really seems to know just how to spell her name. I constantly run into this on the internet, and while it might not seem like a power to some, in the DC universe and other different magically based worlds, it would likely be considered an asset. It would be considered a power because it would protect you. Madelyne's name is spelled Madelyne with Pryor as Pryor. The fact that so many struggle to spell it or even know it would be seen as an asset in many other magical worlds where there is considered to be power in knowing and having someone's name. Like over at DC Comics, this is why some magic users have actually used alternative names. That way they can keep their real ones a secret, so that way demons can't like get their names and like control them or manipulate them. Constantine initially even tried to do this with Hellblazer, but he became too well known and famous and decided to give up his codename as a kind of take that statement to the magic community as a whole. So that's where that name comes from. Number 3. Leave you speechless. As I said earlier, Madelyne Pryor isn't just a powerful psychic, she was also crafted from a piece of the Phoenix Force by Mr. Sinister, putting her on the same level, if not above, potentially, someone like Jean Grey. Still, even then, I was pretty shocked when she reappeared in Hellions and used her powers to make Havoc's mouth literally disappear. This could be perceived as an illusion, an illusory power, but the way it was gruesomely portrayed makes me think it was more of like Maddie manipulating and rewriting reality to literally erase Havoc's mouth from his face, which she either did through, you know, maybe Phoenix connections or just through magic. A la Scarlet Witch with Black Bolt in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Pretty spooky stuff. Number 2. Rules over Limbo. Recently, in the New Mutants comic, Madelyne Pryor once more became the Goblin Queen, but this time more literally the Goblin Queen. She actually took over ruling Limbo from magic, and what's even more wild is she didn't seek to conquer Limbo, she didn't take it by force. Instead, magic decided to give over rulership to Madelyne. Magic had her own reasons, largely to get some distance from something that was literally attached to and represented her childhood trauma, while Madelyne obviously had much to gain from the change in power, chiefly a whole kingdom. However, unlike last time when Madelyne wanted to use the power of limbo for ill, she was revealed to have actually genuinely turned over a new leaf, it seemed, wanting to keep the demons of limbo in check. At least, that's how it seemed initially. Her designs ended up being somewhat reimagined, shall we say, for the Dark Web event, as she was more depicted as a villain there who used the Limbo's resources and populace to once more invade New York City. But we'll get to that in a second. I mean, that all got resolved now. It's kind of a weird thing though, where they were like, she's good. Just kidding, she's evil again. Just kidding, she's good again. You're like, what's happening here? What are we doing with this character? Number 1. Master Diplomat? Madelyne Pryor is perhaps working towards becoming a master diplomat and leader. At the end of the Dark Web event, with Maddie once more being reformed and even becoming an ally of the X-Men during the event, fighting alongside them and even getting to call on them to assemble, so nice, she decides to open up her own embassy for Limbo, stationing it in New York City. Maddie does this to bring the darkness into the light, believing the spirits of Limbo have been hidden away for far too long, seeing them as representing her own darkness and basically saying like, we try to like hide our darkness and suppress it and like put it away, but you know what, in order to heal we need to bring it out into the light. She intends to make sure that the beings of Limbo are no longer rejected and in fact are seen and accepted by the world above, and in this case now around them. Which I kinda love, honestly. I think that's beautiful.
In its 10 resistance to telepathy. Psychics in the Marvel Universe are undeniably real, with a significant number of mutants possessing psychic abilities, including members of the X-Men. Professor X, the X-Men founder, is a powerful psychic, and Jean Grey initially displayed telekinesis before unlocking her own psychic powers. Rachel Grey, Jean Grey's daughter from an alternate universe, is also a psychic and frequently joins the X-Men, but despite the prevalence of psychics, some heroes in the universe receive training to defend themselves against psychic attacks and probing, such as Wolverine, who was given psionic shields by Charles Xavier to enhance his resistance. While these defenses are not foolproof, they offer valuable protection, especially when there are so many damn psychics. Notably, even some villains have safeguards against psychics, like Magneto and Juggernaut, who has that helmet that prevents Professor X from accessing their thoughts. But in a bizarre turn of events, Red Skull consumed Professor X's brain, gaining psychic abilities himself. So there you go, Wolverine, you'll be able to fight against Red Skull a little bit more, I guess. Is that really a common problem for you? I don't think so. And at 9, lie detection. Logan, or Wolverine, whatever you want to call him, possesses a heightened sense of smell and hearing that surpasses that of an average human. His sense of smell is incredibly potent, which allows him to detect scents from a considerable distance, making it useful for tracking down enemies, but this acute sense of smell enables him to actually pick up on certain emotions as well, such as fear, which is emanating from individuals, pheromones, all that jazz. Okay? His hearing is also quite exceptional, allowing him to perceive sounds that are far away and even detect softer noises that are typically beyond the range of normal perception. So, combining these powers, Wolverine actually becomes basically a human lie detector. By focusing on a specific person, he can determine if they are telling the truth or not by relying on his sense of smell, detecting changes in their scent and sweating patterns if they lie, while using his hearing to actually concentrate on their heartbeat and detect any shifts in their tone of voice, which is pretty dope, and I wish I had that in my last relationship. In an 8, Berserker Rage. Here I am just dumping my trauma. Wolverine possesses a dangerous state known as Berserker Rage, which is triggered by an overwhelming anger that drives him to lash out uncontrollably. In this frenzied state, he becomes an unstoppable killing machine, slashing through enemies without hesitation. However, the downside is that Wolverine loses all sense of control and may even harm his allies, unable to recognize them in the midst of his rage, which I certainly relate to. This internal struggle has plagued Logan since childhood and often leads him to distance himself from others, fearing what he might do, but despite the risks, there are moments when the Berserker Rage proves necessary, particularly in his relentless battles against Sabretooth. The movie franchise also showcases this aspect of Wolverine, with a memorable scene in X2, the best X-Men movie, where he unleashes this fury, slashing through adversaries within the confines of the X-Mansion. But again, you all remember that scene, it's the best X-Men movie. Please flash sarcasm on the screen because they won't know I'm joking. In its 7, Night Vision. The combination of Wolverine's claws and super healing already gives him a formidable set of powers. Okay, the healing factor alone ensures that any wound is swiftly healed, including those caused by his claws, making him truly lethal. And alongside these regenerative capabilities that literally brought him back from a drop of blood, Logan possesses heightened senses like the super hearing, the smelling, and the ability to see in the dark. Although this power is often overlooked by some comic writers, it provides him with a distinct advantage in various situations. Wolverine has had an array of powers that has changed and evolved over the years, making him increasingly more powerful, but what initially began as a mutant with enhanced durability and claws developed into a character that is basically a, dare I say, Wolverine. Haha, get it? Yeah. He's constantly aware of his surroundings no matter what environment he's in because of this night vision, and his tendency to eliminate enemies before they actually pose like a genuine threat makes him exceedingly more formidable than normal. And this explains how he's able to do that, because he can see in the dark. And it's 6 swordsmen. In the 1990s comic storyline Fatal Attraction, Magneto forcibly removes the adamantium from Wolverine's body, leaving him without his signature claws. In this adamantiumless period, Wolverine carried a katana given to him by the Yoshida clan for added protection. One notable use of this katana was when he ended up beheading Bloodscreen. Yeah. Oh boy. Later on, Wolverine acquired the Muramasa Blade, a sword with mythical properties capable of neutralizing a mutant's healing abilities, which is the unique blade that became his weapon of choice in certain situations, allowing him to confront and defeat formidable adversaries such as Omega Red and Sabretooth. And as it was the only weapon capable of truly ending Wolverine, therefore also able to end Omega Red and Sabretooth. But yeah, he's skilled with a sword, which you wouldn't really expect because, he has the claws, but also makes sense because the claws are just basically tiny swords. Halfway through into number 5, Wisdom. Logan's journey as a superhero spans across significant historical events. Okay, he served in both World War I and World War II. He even fought alongside Captain America, and following these wars he found himself in Japan, where he formed a family only to tragically lose them, and these devastating losses combined with centuries of heartbreak contribute to Logan's bitter and cynical demeanor. But after going through the adamantium bonding process, he befriended Alpha Fight, a Canadian superhero team, and became one of Canada's earliest superheroes. His initial task involved intervening in a conflict between Hulk and a Wendigo. However, his path took a turn when he was sent to eliminate Charles Xavier, but ended up being influenced by Xavier's telepathic abilities, leading him to join the X-Men. But still, okay, Wolverine's wealth of experiences and wisdom greatly influenced the X-Men's journey, and with an extended lifespan comes years to learn and become wiser, which he clearly has, so then it only continues on. So yeah, dude, damn, well done. Good for you. In at 4, Feral Form. The 90s marked a peculiar era in comic books characterized by excessive violence, extreme physical attributes, and objectification. But it was a time when unconventional ideas emerged, yielding both remarkable stories like Age of Apocalypse and disappointing ones like the Clone Saga. But surprisingly, Wolverine spent a significant portion of this decade without his adamantium skeleton. Despite losing the metal coating, he did retain his bone claws and healing factor, maintaining the classic Wolverine sort of aspect. However, the supervillain Genesis sought to actually restore Wolverine's adamantium, driven by a desire to serve the powerful Apocalypse. In a failed attempt though, Logan's body rejected the procedure and triggered a dormant mutation. Stripped of adamantium, Wolverine underwent a primal transformation, adopting an animalistic mentality while his nails grew into natural claws. It showcased the profound impact that the absence of adamantium had on Wolverine's body, and he just kind of became a beast, ironically enough. So yeah, he kind of needs the adamantium nowadays, otherwise it kind of goes back. Getting close to the end in number 3, Super Dad. On Earth 982, Rena was the new girl at high school, where some of the more popular girls tried to make her life miserable, stating that she was the daughter of an immigrant and an unemployed biker and all that. But when her dad, Logan, picked her up from school on his bike, everyone's opinion changed, especially when they learned that her mother, Elektra, was a wealthy martial arts expert. Yeah, it's crazy what fear can do. However, life at high school wasn't just about dealing with the crowd and normal high school things, because it's a comic book high school. So as Wild Thing, Rena had to save a classmate from a high-speed kidnapper, defeat a computerized assassin, stop a demonic invader, and even fight one of her teachers when he was turned into a Prime Sentinel. But that's just high school. But the fact that he can just pull up to her school and then everyone stops making fun of his kid. That's a superpower, okay? And I wish my dad had that superpower. Although I probably wouldn't be as funny as I think I am if that had been the case. But ultimately, in number 2, time travel. When translating comic book superheroes to the big screen, screenwriters have to take creative liberties to adapt the material effectively, okay? What happens in comics can't necessarily work on screen. For example, Thanos' infatuation with Lady Death, which was a significant aspect of his character in the comics, was omitted for Infinity War and Endgame, allowing for a more focused portrayal of him. Similarly, the X-Men's colorful costumes were deemed impractical for the early films, leading to more black latex that ironically have aged poorly compared to their comic counterparts. But when the classic Days of Future Past storyline was adapted in the movie of the same name, significant alterations were made. In the comics, Kitty Pryde was the central character sent to the past to save the future, but in the movie, Wolverine took on that role. The film introduced the concept of Kitty Pryde's ability to send someone's consciousness back in time, with the caveat that it damages the mind. Due to his regenerative healing factor though, Wolverine became the only valid candidate to actually go through time that far back and ensure everyone's survival. And then finally, in at number 1, the Phoenix Force. I mean, like, okay, this is kind of a cop-out, but like, it still happened, okay? It was originally believed that the Phoenix Force was just simply an alternate personality of Jean Grey, or well, I guess the Phoenix was, just emerging when she acquired immense power. However, after Jean's tragic demise in the Dark Phoenix saga, it was retconned that the Phoenix was in fact a cosmic entity, and the Phoenix Force had a knack for possessing individuals, with Jean Grey being its favored host. Over the years though, it has possessed numerous mutants. Rachel Grey, Jean's daughter from an alternate future, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Colossus, Magic, and Namor were all possessed by the Phoenix Force at some point, and simultaneously, in fact, forming the group known as the Phoenix Five, because, you know, you couldn't have one more, otherwise they would be competing with the Sinister Six, and you couldn't have one less, otherwise it would be like the Fantastic Four. You know, there's a lot of numbers that you gotta work with. But yeah, Wolverine has also had it, okay? So there you go. He's had that, and he has all those powers, or at least he has. And you know what, if you want to get mad at me for including this, that's fine. It's just engagement. Comment on the video and tell me how much you hate my guts.
Number 10, leadership. While he might not be the leader we'd all like for the X-Men, Scott Summers is more often the one that his fellow mutants need. Professor Xavier actually trained Cyclops for the role since day one as a young mutant who had been there since the beginning. So when people ask if he deserves to be a leader, the answer should be an emphatic yes, as he has been training for this role pretty much his entire life. A master tactician, Cyclops usually has his eyes on the bigger picture when it comes to problem solving, meaning sometimes, in order to achieve something good, he can be willing to do something that other heroes might deem as bad or downright dastardly. He kills people. He remade X-Force into a team of child assassins. He became a martyr on purpose, sacrificing himself because he knew the younger mutants needed someone to become their symbol to rally around. So, while we may not always approve of his actions, the bottom line is Cyclops is still one of the best when it comes to prime leaders in the Marvel universe. While a very different character, he's on like a Captain America level of leadership. And that's like people universally agree to that, so not making that up. I know you're all thinking it. Number 9, blast immunity. Due to the fact that they share genes and similar powers, Cyclops has blast immunity when it comes to his brother Havoc's blasts. His brother can devastate and obliterate anything he locks onto with his own shockwave-like blasts, which are emitted from his body, often more specifically his hands. Well, that is unless he targets Scott. Alex himself likewise has immunity to Scott's optic blast as well. Well, usually anyways. And to be clear, they can still attack one another, but the damage is simply negligible. It can be easily shrugged off due to their built-up immunity to each other. And when it comes to his own blast, Scott is completely immune. That's how he still manages to have eyelids and can even prevent his eyes from emitting optic blasts when they are closed shut. Though he does still often have to sleep with his ruby quartz visor to be safe. I always like to imagine him with like a ruby quartz like eye mask. I think that would be super cute. Probably never gonna see that in the comics though. Might be too cute for Scott. Not for me though. Number 8, energy blasts. While many get triggered when I use the term laser eyes in videos, the reality is I do it to poke loving fun at the inconsistency of Scott Summers' powers. It's part of his comic book history. We may refer to the energy he emits from his eyes as optic blasts now, but the truth is optic blast was actually a term coined for him after his powers were retconned. Originally, Scott's powers were explained in that his eyes absorbed energy from the sun and that solar energy energy was actually what created the blast. Hot, solar energy. The only thing that could contain this solar energy was ruby quartz. This meant that his powers could be depleted and would sometimes need to be recharged. At one point he even managed to harness lunar energy to use instead, although lunar energy wasn't shown to be quite as effective, not quite as powerful. However, a lot of fellow comic book nerds had some questions regarding Cyclops' powers in terms of how they were supposed to work, and the source for his main ability was changed. Now his eyes would be known as portals to another dimension, overflowing with energy, where the logic of our world's physics did not apply. This made his powers appear more versatile, more limitless, and allowed writers more creative license with them. It also appeased fans, so just kinda weird. I love that we think that makes more sense. Oh, they're portals to another dimension. No, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. Number 7. Visor. Okay, so we all know that Cyclops has a visor, and that his visor helps him flip the switch for his optic blasts. But what you might not know is that when he fires blasts in the comics and you see him clenching his fists, that's not just a flair for the dramatic. That fist clenching also has to do with controlling his powers. Say what? It's true. The controls for his visor are actually inside his gloves. They're comprised of a series of small buttons sensitive to pressure, allowing him to change the size of the opening in the visor and have very precise control over how much damage he wants to inflict, as well as where he wants to target that damage to. This may sound like a silly place to put said buttons. What if you accidentally clenched your fist in frustration? Until you realize this also gives Scott access to his powers even when restrained. Also means he can just take off his gloves and go to sleep with his visor on. So, pretty cool. Tie his hands, he can still use them. Put him to bed, he just takes off his gloves. Useless. Number 6. Superior DNA. Despite having siblings who appear more powerful than him, Mr. Sinister has always had and continues to have an obsession with Scott Summers. Why? Well, he's also obsessed with the whole Summers line, of course, but according to him, Scott is the genetic key to creating the most powerful mutant of all time. This is due to his superior DNA. But what does that mean? Well, I don't know exactly. I'm still waiting for Mr. Sinister's TED Talk on mutant DNA to help explain this whole thing in layman's terms. But for now, we just have to trust the villainous geneticist on this. I mean, I doubt he would have manipulated Scott's entire life on the scale that he has without facts to back up his claim. So he just has superior DNA. He just has it. Some people, they're just born with it. Some people, it's Madelyne. Number 5. Telepathic defense. While we're not always aware of this power for a multitude of heroes, I feel like it has become a secret must-have if you just want to be part of the X-Men team. Everyone on the X-Men seems to just have it without our knowledge until it just randomly comes up in the comics. But I guess that's what happens when you work alongside and fight against so many powerful telepaths. Actually, this ability was harnessed and strengthened by Scott through rigorous training with Professor Charles Xavier, and through his close connection to one of the strongest telepaths in the Marvel Universe, Jean Grey, and later his relationship with another accomplished telepath, Emma Frost. Although his telepathic defense didn't protect him from having Jean uncover his psychic affair with Emma Frost. So yeah. Ooh. Feel like that would have been a good time to flex that defense. Feel like, ooh, don't find out. Oh well, she would have found out anyways. He would have told her because he loves her. Number 4. Super trigonometry. Due to his danger room training, Cyclops is insanely skilled when it comes to his optic blasts. I'm sure it's hard enough to just aim using your eyes, as I don't think it would actually be as intuitive as we all think. And even the flick of your eyes to a different direction mid-battle could mess with where you are targeting. You'd also have to be quite focused. Scott is not only skilled when it comes to targeting with his blasts in general, but he can also bounce his optic blasts off surfaces, knowing which angles to approach in order to bounce the blasts around in a less direct manner, avoiding obstacles and catching his opponents unawares. And in fact, firing his optic blast in a specific direction also requires a lot of control with his visor, as his eyes don't really allow him to focus a blast. It's often depicted that his visor is actually more where specific targeting comes in. I think he's got panels that allow him to adjust the angle. Part of this skill is practicality, and part of it is mind math, known as his super trigonometry skills. You do not want to play pool with Cyclops if he's using his blasts. He will beat you. He will definitely beat you. Ooh, Hawkeye versus Cyclops in pool, who would win? These are the questions. Number 3. Black Vortex. The Black Vortex is a construct that allows those who possess it to unleash their full cosmic potential. In Cyclops Volume 3, a younger version of Cyclops from the past was working with his dad Corsair and the Starjammers, who were actually tracking the Black Vortex, and Cyclops ended up being imbued by its energy after he and his teammates, young Iceman and Groot, became trapped on the ship where the vortex was and had to fight their way out. They all decided decided to submit to the vortex, and in so doing were granted its cosmic power, becoming the most powerful versions of themselves. Cyclops himself had an awesome suit that appeared to allow him to channel his blast through his eyes, his head, his neck, and his chest. And instead of his visor, he's actually wearing a mask, implying that he has more control over his blast ability. Also, Iceman looks like an ice elf, and it's like super cute and awesome. I just love a good ice elf. Also that hair, he has such nice long hair. Elves are so cute. Number 2 breaks adamantium. During the Age of Apocalypse storyline, Cyclops and Wolverine end up on opposite sides of the battle. Cyclops found himself temporarily allied with Apocalypse, and although in falling for the rebel and prisoner Jean Grey felt like he might be switching sides, this all ended up happening not quite fast enough. He came to blows with Logan, known as Weapon X in this alternate timeline, who showed up and fought to free Jean by himself. Unsurprisingly, once again, even in this alternate timeline, Jean was a huge part of these two's dislike for one another, and without the mutual cause of Xavier and the X-Men to unite them, their fight became a brutal one. Cyclops lost an eye and proved the power of his blast when he ended up breaking through Logan's adamantium-coated skeleton, severing his hand. Was it the left hand or the right hand? I feel like in comics, I feel like it was the left hand, but that's some real trivia for you. Tell me which hand it was. Number 1 Spirit Bomb. What's better than optic blasts? Happiness blasts! Yep, Scott one time used his power to channel happy thoughts through his eyeballs in order to stop an alien invasion, with a little help of course from his friends. This was back in the 70s in volume 1 of Uncanny X-Men. Of course it's from the 70s. A race of aliens known as the Xenox threatened to destroy the Earth using the proximity of their piloted homeworld's gravity, but they had one huge weakness: their fear of positive emotions. Meaning that when Charles Xavier channeled all of Earth's positive thoughts and passed them telepathically onto Jean, who in turn passed them on to Alex Summers, who boosted them with cosmic rays, and passed them on to Cyclops, whose eyes they came out of in a beam of hot and awesome intensity, which was then cooled somewhat by Iceman as the beam made its way straight to the Xenox, the invaders were successfully scared off, defeated. Man, that's a lot of passing. That's like, these guys should play like sports more, I think. They'd be so good at it. And that's how Cyclops' Spirit Bomb ability saved the planet. Sure, he needed help, but geez, what a plot. So yeah, he can use his eyes to channel other things sometimes. Fun fact.
Starting us off in at number 10, Atom Kinesis. Storm has the power to control matter on an atomic level. This is the basis of her weather manipulation abilities. She has a psionic ability to control all forms of weather and ecosystems, modifying and controlling aspects like temperature, precipitation, humidity, and moisture, and can generate lightning and other electromagnetic atmospheric phenomena, including atmospheric pressure. And that control is incredibly precise to boot. So yeah, girl can do some awesome stuff. Up next, number 9, Telepathic Resistance. Sometimes simply referred to as her immense willpower, Storm has the ability to resist telepathic attacks. Now this is actually one of her more interesting abilities due to the fact that it wasn't part of her genetic mutant skill set. It was something that she learned and honed over the years thanks to being in such close proximity with telepathic mutants who were also part of the X-Men team. Her resistance to telepathic attacks also becomes enhanced thanks to the electromagnetic forces she manipulates, which can help cloud up her foe's focus. Moving on to number 8, her Earthlink. Storm has developed a very special psychic bond with the primal force of Earth's biosphere. Now this elevates her powers to a spiritual level, feeding her spiritual and material sustenance and creating a vast amount of empathy for living beings. This is why her emotions can overload her sometimes. Not only do her emotions dictate the strength of her control over the weather, but it can also lead to catastrophic effects if she can't maintain control over her feelings. Anywho, this Earthlink can also sense and detect life force. She can sense things like dying life forms. She once sensed that a tree was dying on the property of the Xavier mansion. She once sensed that the blackbird was cutting through the atmosphere even though she was thousands of miles away. And she can sense any natural phenomena occurring on the planet, like earthquakes. I mean, if she stopped being a crime fighter, she would have a great career as a meteorologist. Just saying. And at number 7, Magical Potential. While we haven't really seen much of Storm busting out magical powers, based on her ancestry, there is evidence that she could potentially unlock magical abilities. Now we've seen this become a reality in alternate universes, including when the 616 Ileana Rasputina, aka Magic, found herself in the Limbo Dimension where she ran into an alternate of Storms, who would then go on to train her in the arts of witchcraft and black magic. Back to the 616 Storm though. One of her ancestors was a Sorceress Supreme, and other ancestors of hers worshipped Egyptian gods, specifically Ashtur, the mother of Agamotto, who seems to favor those of Ororo's bloodline. Imagine having a god back you, just knowing that like, they got you if you ever run into trouble. That'd be kinda nice. Moving on to number 6, she can breathe underwater. Storm's ability to control and manipulate natural forces extends to the power of separating matter molecules into oxygen and hydrogen via electrolysis. Now this means she can breathe underwater, as seen in Extreme X-Men issue 2. I mean, it makes sense considering she can control so much precipitation in the first place. It'd be nice to, you know, create like a tsunami but also be able to withstand it and breathe through it and not feel like you're drowning. Let's sidetrack a bit here from Storm's mutant powers and look at one of her abilities that comes from years of practice and experience. Being able to pick locks, pick pockets, and get past advanced security systems, and use her immense dexterity when in a pickle or needing to escape from somewhere. Now this dexterity isn't just in her hands either, she's proficient with her toes and mouth too. Get your mind out of the gutter, friends. Now these skills are ones that she keeps honed and even passed down to students of hers. Go to Xavier's School of Gifted Youngsters, learn how to pick a lock, and steal some money. Moving on to number 4, energy vision. This one largely ties into Storm's atom kinesis powers. Storm is able to alter her visual perception of the world around her. Now this allows her to see energy patterns with much more clarity, and she can detect the flow of electromagnetic, kinetic, and thermal energy, which she can then bend to her will, allowing her to create the likes of thunderstorms, hurricanes, blizzards, you name it. But it's not just the natural world that she can perceive differently. She can also use this ability on humans, and see the nervous systems of others, which comes in handy when needing to counterattack. All this is possible with just a blink of her eyes, and she can even use it to see in almost complete darkness. Up next at 3, she can use her powers in space. When we think of Storm's vast connection to nature, we often tie those powers to the environment on Earth. But Storm can also use her powers in outer space, and has done so in the past. Whatever planet she's on, her deep connection to nature allows her to make use of that planet's natural energy. And similar to our previous number concerning her ability to breathe underwater, because she can affect and manipulate molecules, along with interstellar and intergalactic mediums, she can theoretically breathe in outer space depending on the conditions and the nearby environment. So not a foolproof thing, but definitely something that she might be able to amount to. In at number 2, teleportation. Now we are getting into some of the more obscure abilities of Storm's. Storm is capable of teleporting. Sort of. In Extraordinary X-Men Volume 1, Issue 16, Storm used energy from witches and wizards to create a portal out of lightning, and then she used said portal to teleport herself and others to various realms. It is believed that she was able to do this thanks to having that magical ancestry that we mentioned earlier. This was part of the Kingdom's Fall story arc in which Sapna, a relatively new X-Men member, was possessed by the World Eater, and Storm and Magic had to work together to prevent it from claiming the realm of Limbo. And finally, in at number 1, she's a god. Divinity. In Storm's first introduction, she was being worshipped as a goddess in the Serengeti after her mutant powers had appeared, which is where she was recruited by Professor Xavier in Giant Size X-Men issue 1 in 1975. Technically, it was specifically Kenya. The gift of godhood has been passed down from Aurora's ancestors, and the mutant can be endowed with more power from people's beliefs and prayers. The more people who believe in her, the more powerful she becomes. She's like a weather Santa, but without gifts and a much nicer physique. Sorry, Santa. In Black Panther issue 172, she became an actual god when the faith of Wakandans helped her ascend and gave her enough power to defeat the villain adversary. She's also been known to invoke the god Oshtur for aid from time to time. Looks like that connection does come in handy.